Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick. We're here to talk about training camp and 7/31/23. Great day, first day in pads, not as hot as it has been previously, and a much more physical practice that we have to talk about. And here with me to discuss it is Chris Rim of the Baltimore Banner. Chris, how you doing?
Good. How you doing, Ken? Thanks for having me.
Wonderful for you to join me. I really appreciate it. And Baltimore Banner via the New York Times, as I understand it, did some sort of an internship there.
Yeah. I was there for a year doing a fellowship at the Times.
All right, that's terrific. It's okay. That'll be on your resume for the rest of your life. That's just terrific to have that. Uh, let's jump right in and talk about the offense, I guess. The days I've been there so far, the offense has not been looking very good. Been very few long plays down the field. A little better today.
Yeah, I actually wrote about that today. I thought the offense looked better today. I think that even today, I thought almost the second team offense looked obviously playing the second team, but I thought the second team offense almost looked a little bit better. Tyler Huntley was able to get some throws down the field, and even Josh Johnson a few times. But yeah, I thought as far as the offense goes, they definitely looked more explosive. I think what we haven't seen in camp so far from the first group is kind of anything over 20 yards. Really, there's a lot of underneath passes, underneath routes, and the first opening day, Odell had that cool catch where he kind of juked while the ball was in the air, and ever since then there hasn't really been the deep passing. But I thought the offense definitely looked better than they have been today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think is a fairly close practice as it went. There's a score up on the scoreboard. Now I'm not sure if they're doing the
Yeah,
scoring again, but it looked like 52-48, which
yeah,
for the offense, that's a nice close score. That's what they want. That's
exactly,
a win right
exactly.
there. Let's go back and talk participation for a second because I jumped past this. And this is important, but all the PUP and NFI guys are still inactive. Now, we talked a little bit before practice, but Trayvon Mullen, you say, has been re-signed despite the fact he was apparently released. He had a guaranteed
Mhm.
contract on NFI, and now he's back. We don't know the exact nature of his contract yet, correct?
We don't know the nature, but usually, as we talk, that usually means that that contract might not be guaranteed anymore. But yeah, that's what they did. They got re-signed him after releasing him, kept him on that list, that non-football injury list.
Odd that would be that it would happen that way, but they may
Yeah,
also have come to an agreement on a portion of the contract that will be guaranteed. So I looked on OTC just before the show here. It hadn't been posted yet. It's got a 0 for his salary this year, so that'll be interesting in terms of finding that out. The other
yeah,
big sorry, the other big return today, Pepe Williams back from PUP and practicing. So it's always nice when you don't have a new player out and you have a guy returning, and that oftentimes it's very difficult to do at any point during camp, other than the time between the last preseason game and the start of the regular season.
when you have a
When you have a net positive one in terms of returns.
oh, right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you saw today too, around the NFL, the Ravens practice later than most teams. So when we go into practice, we see kind of what's happened around the league, and around the league, a lot of players got injured today.
Mm-hmm.
First day of pads. So yeah, like you're saying, it's that time of the year where people go down, and uh, having someone come back is definitely a plus without anyone leaving.
Yeah, very much so. And Pepe Williams will, I'm sure, be competing for that slot job. He was a lot of people projected him as the favorite going in. I would have probably stated it a little differently that the Ravens don't really have any significant slot depth. Brandon Stevens had been playing there with him out. Pepe back now provides some competition. We saw a little bit of Arterius Washington today too.
Yeah. That spot. I mean, Coach Harbaugh talked about it today in his presser, and he kind of said, everybody wants that spot, and as they should. You see, guys are going to have moments where they look like they're on it. Like today, Brandon Stevens, I think he was on that play where Nelson Aguilar caught that
Mm-hmm.
touchdown. but then I'll have moments where he's going to win too. So I think it's a difficult job for the staff when you have so many guys who are fluctuating, and it's early. But I don't, I'm not sure if anyone has, obviously, pads just were put on, so obviously no one has separated themselves. But as camp goes on, as you know, as people who, people who follow football, someone will, I assume, or two people may, separate themselves from the pack.
Yeah, so be some of that in practice, and I think we may have a misguided opinion sometimes about how much the coaches value the practice and even the closed room sessions with the position groups relative to the play on the field in those preseason games. And as fans, we generally want to put our eggs into that. Let's look and see what the preseason looks like because it's live fire and whatnot. But coaches, they have a different set of things they're looking for in practice. Hand placement. They're looking for footwork. They're looking for how people allow a receiver to get off the line of scrimmage if you're a slot corner, for example. And they also look for that guy who really has the work ethic in the position group room to go with it. So a lot of it is still hidden from us, even if we're at camp,
Exactly.
to really understand exactly what's going on. But that's an interesting one. Geno Stone left practice early with about 10 minutes early with a slight limp. Practice was just about over. John Harbaugh says what he always says, that he didn't think it looked serious.
Right. To be honest, though, it from my vantage point, it did seem just because the way he walked back, like it could have been a sprain, but yeah, who knows? It did, but it from him the way he talked about it, he did definitely brush it off. He said we'll get more information as we get forward, and who knows what it could be. Hopefully he's okay, but
Geno Stone, an important player for the Ravens, both in terms of being a special teams captain, but also provides incredibly valuable backup depth at safety. And when the Ravens really needed to have Kyle Hamilton take over in the nickel, and they still had Chuck Clark last year, they still needed Geno Stone to take over at free safety for Marcus Williams. I thought he did an outstanding job while he was in there.
yeah, for sure, he's a guy that they're going to rely on and that they'll need. So I think as we get more information, it'll get more concerning or less concerning.
Yeah, hopefully not. I mean, he's a player. I'm sure we'll see snaps this year in some capacity or another on defense, either
Yeah,
because of injuries or because they are forced to move Hamilton back to the slot at some point, or potentially even if they somehow go to a dime back or some other situation where they want a safety and they don't like either of their inside linebacker options, or one of them gets hurt. So
for sure.
you could definitely see him for a lot of reasons. Another return today we didn't talk about yet is Zay Flowers. He's back from a stomach bug. Not a big deal, but again, a net +1 even when you include Stone in the situation, and it was nice to have him back on the field.
Yeah, for sure. I think with Zay, he's like one of the big celebrities on the team when he's out there, and all the kids rush down to talk with him and say hi to him. So it's definitely makes practice more exciting when he's out there. And today he looked like the stomach bug was gone. He wasn't as dominant as he was. I think the first day he had a
Mm-hmm.
really big day. But yeah, he looked fine.
Now, I just want to set the stage for you because Chris and I both stand along the same sideline where there is a stands set up for the fans, of course, who are coming to things, and there's a lot of kids there, and also, somewhat unfortunately, perhaps the wide receivers also come over and practice right in front of those stands. So you can imagine we're in the middle of a screaming match between a bunch of kids who want Odell Beckham's autograph and these said kids, and we hear
Exactly.
it all day long. And then they also ask the kids to line up in front of the stands there, which is quite near where the interview area is. And I don't know about you, but I have a hard time anyway at my age with competing sounds. And it's a normal thing that older people get. They don't hear well when there's a lot of sounds competing. It drives me nuts to have all that screaming going on. When we're right in that corner there and it's bouncing off. They need something there, padded walls or interior of a sound booth kind of looking stuff or
No, exactly.
whatever.
Yeah. Every time it's like a challenge to hear what they're saying. That's why I try to get up there early and get real close sometimes so I can hear it.
That was one of the nice things about practice is the informality of it, and that was probably more true at McDaniel and when they were there. But James Prochet was playing catch with some kids in the early part of practice. I thought that was kind of cool, and nobody was trying to keep the football for themselves. They all threw it back. They were just excited to play catch, and that was nice to see. They were asking Odell for his autograph, and he was coming up with excuses why he couldn't give it to them, and that
Yeah.
sounded funny.
And someone there was a woman who I guess she had followed Odell to each city he's gone to, and she said, "Hey Odell, I'm here. You're great." And he remembered her, so that was cool.
Yeah. Well, we see the wide receivers, of course, on that side, and just a couple of things to talk about from this. Greg Lewis did the bad ball drill today, where he kind of throws underhanded, low to the ground, tries to make the receivers dig the ball out. He can also throw a wobble in there. He can throw behind the receivers, but he's trying intentionally to give them some bad balls and see how receivers adjust with that drill. Any standouts from that?
I think I wasn't. I don't think there was anyone who stood out to me, but I was trying to watch uh, Zay closely,
Mm-hmm.
just because I think obviously he has ball skills, but I think there's a possibility he could be a returner at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So I do. I just and it's different from being a wide receiver and catching versus catching those, and though it's not the same thing, you just another opportunity to see ball skills with him in a different way. So I wouldn't say there was anyone that particularly stood out for me, but I was keeping an eye on him, and he looked like he always does. What about you?
Shamar Bridges had a drop. Other than that, I didn't think there was much. I thought he did a very good job of keeping the ball low. It was around ankle high, and these
Yeah,
receivers, and then there's an occasional wobble mixed in,
yeah,
occasional behind the receiver. It's a nice drill. It's kind of
yeah.
like you can't really learn to hitting off a pitching machine that gives you a nice straight pitch every time, and I say even if it's hard. Um, but they developed a new batting practice machine now that throws more like a pitcher simulated pitcher, and that apparently it's very hard to hit off of, and which hey,
Mm,
hitting is hard. Um,
right.
and you got to have some of that. You got to have some difficult stuff. I remember a few years ago, John Harbaugh brought tennis balls into practice, and he was shooting them out of a tennis ball cannon, obviously, and they were the defensive backs are having a great time with it. But the idea was you wanted to have soft hands to be able to catch the tennis ball, and the Ravens had a big problem with not getting enough turnovers the previous season.
Mm,
And a lot of it was dropped interceptions and not getting to enough balls, but dropped interceptions as well. So
yeah.
everybody had fun with that drill. All right, to continue on a little bit with the wide receivers, you saw the attention Beckham gets. They had a delayed, very easy lob of about a 5-yard pass. Odell Beckham reaches back to catch it with one hand, and it's completely intentional. He's
Oh
saying,
yeah.
this is not, but
Yeah, I mean the play was dead too, and he just went and grabbed it, and he like at one point he moonwalked, and then there's a video on the Ravens account of him doing something else. So he's just a rock star, and I think he knows it. Not I think he knows it, and it's cool to see him interact with the fans though. It's I don't think he ever, at least in the week I've seen, that he ever goes overboard with it, where he's like not focusing on a play or something. It's always like, in warm-ups or as he's adjusting his uniform, he like, will say hi or engage in a conversation. And, you know, those kids might come out there, once, and, they'll have the memory forever. And I think that's cool too to see, because, every single day, oftentimes I feel like what gets caught with these guys is like the moments when maybe they don't sign an autograph or like they don't
Mhm.
engage, a kid, and then to see them, every day there's dozens of kids asking for the same thing. It becomes understandable, and then I think maybe like I appreciate it more to see them, doing that every single day, because even us standing in between it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine. This is like the I don't know, however many days, and kids are asking you to dance again, or so yeah.
It's I think Ed Norris asked me on 1057. He said, it's a welcome distraction, isn't it? I think he's right so far. We haven't seen the real um, drama of it. We haven't seen like Ben Roethlisberger always talking about the next injury he has or this or that. We haven't seen the negative part of it. And the Ravens, they had it in a sense with Terrell Suggs. Terrell Suggs was a guy um, just brought joy to every practice from a different way. There are three fields out there at the castle. You always knew which one Terrell Suggs was on, and you could still hear him, even if you were on one of the others. It really didn't matter. He was the loudest guy there, consistently had funny comments to say. You could always pick up on what he's doing, and it's very intentional and kind of sometimes cutting and sarcastic, and other times it was just funny and clownish, but it was always a very welcome, positive energy for practice.
Yeah.
All right. So OBJ also beat Rock Ya-Sin by a step down that left sideline. Couldn't haul that one in, but it's nice to get a little bit of separation. Obviously, that's one of the concerns with Odell this year. Not generally speaking going to be his hands or even his catch radius. It's more about can he get that separation?
Yeah, for sure, and it's good to see. And I think there have been times too where he's gotten some separation with whoever's defending him, and sometimes they just might not they might not look his way on the play. So I think he's looked good so far, albeit first day in pads.
Nelson Aguilar, you mentioned the long catch down the right sideline in the end zone. Really nice body up move on Brandon Stevens for the touchdown.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those plays that you envision of doing in Madden. Like if you like you want that play to work in Madden, but sometimes it doesn't work. And he just went up, and yeah, it's like one of those highlights that you would see on the top plays, or you'd post on your Instagram. It was that kind of highlight, and Brandon Stevens was on the wrong end of it.
Yeah, it's unfortunately another defensive back had a tough day too. But Laquan Treadwell, among the wide receivers, was regularly targeted today. Included a very long grab down the right sideline, yeah, where he beat JAD. JAD had a very tough day. But anyway, Laquan Treadwell beat JAD, and Laquan Treadwell got additional targets that day. And I go back to day 3, what Todd Monken said about earning your additional opportunities, and I'm wondering now, is Treadwell entering the totem pole in a meaningful way in this wide receiver group?
I mean, I guess it's tough to say again after just the first day, but I mean, today he looked the part. And like you're saying, he got the targets. That play that you're talking about up the sideline where he, I mean, I hate to say like scored in these kind of situations, but it was a touchdown. But he was a big body guy. Someone who, can regularly go up and get it, like you saw Aguilar do, who's not like that big of a guy. So I think, he's a dude who we know as a first rounder with tons of talent. So it's not surprising to see him, flash and do these things that we know he's able to do. I guess it's just the consistency, and if he can continue to do that, right?
Yeah, he's been in the league now. Let's see. He came into the league in 2016. So this is his 8th season now. He's still only 28 years old, by the way. He turned 28 only in June. So he's a young 8th-year veteran, that's for sure, to be at this point. But his yards per target have not been good in his career. And I always point to that as the biggest single statistic for a wide receiver. He's at 7.0 in his career. First 3 years in the league, it's hard to believe he survived this, but 5.0, 5.7, 5.7. And then out of nowhere, no, it's only 16 catches. He had 11.5 and 16 catches. And 7.0, then 8.5 is year for Jacksonville, which is something you'd look at and say, that's a pretty good year. Maybe he's still got a little something left. And then 4.2 for Seattle last year. It's only 10 targets, but still, there's not a lot there to go on. And yet he looked good enough today that with the Ravens, the end of the Ravens wide receiver roster not looking too good or being hurt, that he might be a guy who might make it.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, I'm going to skip the other wide receiver comments I had because I think we're kind of getting behind time. I comment on Lamar Jackson. Anything from today you'd like to comment on? I got one comment to make when you're done.
Uh, from today with Lamar, I thought, yeah, I don't really have anything except I guess earlier I would have liked to see him try a few more long, but forcing it is never good.
Yeah, I thought he had good zip on the ball in the intermediate level. So that's one thing. I would say I know he's never been a guy who had a super long hitched up delivery like Tim Tebow or some other quarterbacks
Right.
we've seen in the past. But he's a quick release. The other thing I'm really loving seeing out of this camp is he's done this twice now, is to see him put zip on the ball after rolling left. When right-handed quarterbacks roll left, that's usually death to a right-handed
Right.
quarterback. And Joe Flacco could not get his feet reset to make a throw on that side of the field. But Jackson not only doesn't really have to completely reset his feet, although he can because he's so quick. He usually uses the Mahomes method where he kind of turns his upper body to throw the ball. I think what
Yeah.
we've seen there has been very impressive.
Yeah, for sure. And I was thinking about I think there was one today. I forget who forced him out, but he made it the kind of throw that you're describing, but I think it resulted in a drop. But yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk a little offensive line here. Now, the first day of pads is a big deal for the offensive line. They're one of the groups that's playing a lot of brother-in-law football without pads. You just can't go all out. And if you do, you maybe do it a couple of snaps and then you get a talking to if you're a defensive lineman. So if you're an offensive lineman, you're not really getting that, iron sharpens iron, highest level of competition from the man across from you either. It's brother-in-law play. It's just easy. But you're in pads now today, and it's time to start showing up. And in 11 on 11s, I did not really feel like the offensive line had that good a day. I thought everybody had some problems.
Yeah,
Solomon Linderbaum, yeah, go ahead.
no, I was going to say the same thing. I thought I didn't think they had a good day at all either. It was they often it seemed like they were getting in the backfield with ease. It just felt like the defense was like really confident today, and like not to say that because we said it earlier, it wasn't like the offense was bad or anything of that sort. But I thought the line play definitely had more to be desired, and just like multiple plays where where Lamar's being forced out, of the pocket in this kind of setting, and then you have a bunch of maybe would be sacks or and then even on the run for all of the runs today, there was nothing.
Yeah,
There was
not a single
nothing.
breakaway. Not
Yeah,
a single
nothing.
breakaway.
It was every single time. It was like, yeah, that was concerning. The running aspect for sure too.
Yeah, and that maybe the Ravens' run defense is really good, so hopefully
Yeah,
that's part of it. But yeah, that's something. It's not going to be as much of a focus as it was with Roman to get running backs level 2 first contact opportunities. And the reason I talk about that all the time on the show, and sometimes I explain it, I guess, but not always, is that you want to have your first contact opportunity be with a smaller man. And that could be a 230-pound linebacker instead of a 300-pound defensive tackle. When you can make that happen, even if that defensive tackle is just getting a paw on you, he may be turning you, he may be retracting you in some way that is going to reduce your run. He may be throwing a body into you, which can be a lot worse. That'll retract you in the backfield. But with Roman, the team was exceptionally good at piercing at the point of attack and creating those first contact opportunities in level 2. We definitely did not see much of that today.
no, not none of it. It was as soon as they got past the line of scrimmage, they were getting multiple paws on them. It was often a group. The whole defense was swarming towards them. It was a lot of celebrations, and yeah, that running game was not effective today.
We had one snap that went off early, hit the quarterback in the foot. That was with Anthony Brown, and a
Yep.
really disastrous 3-play series with Brown. Brown had a run that went nowhere out of the mesh where he pulled it. And it's not Brown's game to pull from the mesh anyway, but it was interesting to see that. And then an early snap from center, Jalen Thomas, I believe was the center at that point, number 69. And then that hit him in the legs. And then a room service interception that was dropped by Del'Shawn Phillips. So,
Oh my
it was
gosh,
right to him.
that was he kind of put his head into the field after that one. It looked like the pass was intended for him.
Yeah.
So that'll warrant some push-ups.
Yeah. You would think there's definitely a lot of accountability on display during practice, and this is the time for it. You don't want to see it in front of 70,000 fans on
Exactly.
Sunday Night Football, where you have to get a lot of on-field coaching and helmet padding, and that's the good kind, as opposed to somebody coming up and cocking their head at a 45-degree angle and saying, "What were you thinking on that play?"
Exactly.
So it's good. This is the time to get that out of your system. All right, how about we move over the defense? And I'm sorry, I'm taking more time than I expected on this. We're kind of going slow. You good on time?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. So Marlon Humphrey, definitely a mixed day today, but he started off very well with that great coverage play on Zay Flowers down the right sideline.
Yeah, and he smothered him there, and they couldn't really separate from him, and then he had that play where I think he thought he was going to pick it off with Odell, but Odell, it looked like in the video Odell tried to grab it with one hand or play defense and just tipped it to himself.
Yep.
So you just can't win on those ones, and then he had a few got beat, but I think overall he's looked good in camp. I think. I think he looks the part. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. He had two of those tip drill plays, which is hard to happen in one thing because the second one was to Andrews on a deflected ball, went back to Andrews. But he is one of the guys who is a consistent, positive, keep people loose on the field kind of guy, like Suggs was in terms of that. So I saw a video of him doing his announcer voice to talk about the practice afterwards, like to give his own camp notes.
Yeah.
That sounded pretty funny.
Yeah. I saw the clip. I haven't watched it. He's been doing that every day, I think. Oh,
really?
The Ravens have been posting him. Yeah, he goes on there and does something every day. Yeah.
All right. Justin Matt at BK, a big day today. Two big pressures as I saw it. One of them might have been blown dead for a sack. One of them was a jailbreak across the line where Ajabo also had good pressure on the play. But really nice to see him amping it up, playing physical. And you mentioned the celebrations. One of those jailbreak, I think, ended up with a fair number of defenders streaming onto the field and high-fiving and celebrating.
Yeah, for sure. I wrote. Yeah, he was probably he stood out today in terms of the players on that side of the ball, really kind of just wreaking havoc, and he it's good to see, like you said, him stepping up, and a guy who maybe is not big of a household name as some of the others, stepping up and making plays early in camp for sure.
Yeah,
I'm going to say too, it's always a weird thing as I always think about this from in camp, right? You have to, in order for someone to be playing good, they're probably often making someone look bad. So it's like, I was just thinking about that in terms of, every day in camp, there's like, winners and losers, and he was a winner today.
Yeah, it's kind of a zero-sum game. You're saying when you're playing yourself, you can't ever come out ahead in net.
Yeah.
It's definitely true, and we want to see live fire, and that's why these joint practices with the Commandos are so important, and then the preseason games, of course, themselves. If you're a fan, or if you're a season ticket holder who really loves to see winning football, you pretty much don't care about the preseason. But if you're an analyst, you love the preseason. This is a chance to get down to the depths of the depth chart and really understand who the Ravens might have, who has some future value, who they're going to have to protect on the practice squad. All of these, not protect, but put on the practice squad.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah. It's like, being in a Hard Knocks episode, but you're, you're there. So yeah, this is where, you have so many, 90 guys on a roster, and it gets cut down each week. And, a lot of these guys too, have great stories. And I think that's what's really exciting too, is like telling the stories of these guys, even if they don't make the team, everyone, there's just, you have,
do you have a good example from this year so far that you sound like or maybe from a previous camp that you've been to?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of I think other camps or this, I mean, this camp maybe. I mean, there's a guy like I think Jaquan Amos
Hmm.
is one guy who I've talked to a little bit. He started at Villanova and then he kind of went somewhere, transferred, didn't really work out, and then he went to Ball State, and now he's on a team with he's a Philadelphia native, and he's on a team with other Philly guys that he kind of has looked up to at through college and worked with, and now he's like playing side by side with like Daryl Worley and Rock Ya-Sin, and he's in that secondary, and he got a pick on the second day
Hmm.
of camp. So I think that's a guy who comes to mind as like a story that we could tell, and um, that I think fans will be interested in, regardless of if people make a team or um, if you read it now, it makes you more invested in practice.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I think it's almost impossible not to have a great story when you're in the NFL. First of all, I mean,
Right.
there's so many obstacles. It's kind of like if you're at the final table in the World Series of Poker. I guarantee you there were some great hands that got you there. There are some
Right.
really interesting things. So we see. I talked to Ben Powers last year. He had some. Not only did he have a great story, personally about coming up through school, but the other thing it gives you is he tells you exactly how he plays offensive line. Well, I look at the top of the right number, and because he's not going to fake me with that, he's not going to move it.
Right.
And then I have to. It's just they all have great information to impart to you like that. That's just, to me, it's pure gold. It's something that I otherwise don't get access to, and I really enjoy. So yeah, I hope you'll really enjoy the opportunity to get to talk to as many players as possible this year, Chris, because I'm sure you'll do a great job of reporting it to us.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah, we'll do. Sure.
Trenton Simpson, a hard push out of bounds on Prochet. He rushed the quarterback once and got in there quickly. It forced Huntley to throw the ball away. I had not seen much from Trenton Simpson so far this camp, so it was nice to see that.
Same. I was gonna say I hadn't really said his name much until today, but he was aggressive and he seemed like a guy who was excited to have the pads on. Maybe Patrick Queen seemed the most excited, but he seemed next.
Yeah. Brent Urban, I thought, had a big day and it went a little unnoticed, but he got double teamed by Cleveland, then Falele, which is two of the biggest men ever to play in the NFL. And on that
Right.
same play, he still got pushed off and knocked down a ball that was headed on a little
Exactly.
swing pass out to the right.
Yeah, exactly. That was an impressive play, and he's like, it's a reminder that he's 6'7",
Yeah.
but he leaped up there like while getting a double team, and like just shows you how talented these guys are and athletic they are.
I also had a really nice stop on a cutback from Justice Hill. By the way, I really pity Justice Hill today because it's obvious that the Ravens were having a lot of trouble getting level two opportunities. And Justice Hill took kind of what looked like a pretty stiff physical pounding. He was knocked down a couple times, once by Patrick Queen, kind of shouldered him down. It was the one time I really thought the practice got a little overly physical. Was at that point I thought that was kind of an unnecessary knockdown, but generally speaking, I think pretty clean.
Yeah, yeah, me too. That's why I said with Patrick Queen, it seemed like he was excited, and that hit stood out to me. It was like right before the end zone. He kind of knocked him out of bounds, and Justice Hill is kind of a smaller guy relative
Mhm.
to
Yes.
the NFL, so he's kind of an easy target, I would say, and it seemed like he was getting his fair share today.
Looked like Keaton Mitchell was a guy who also got hit a couple times, and he's a very small guy, obviously muscular, but very small guy. He got taken down twice by Josh Ross, and once was the kind you'd expect that the line isn't really getting it done, didn't provide him with a great opportunity, and he gets bottled up. Another time it was Ross took him down by the ankles, and what I thought was really a good tackle. It was just past the line of scrimmage. He kind of had gotten to a spot, and he had to react to it and take Keaton down that way.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think the I think the issue with the sometimes with these guys, it's hard to. I think with other sports, sometimes it's easy to go half speed. Maybe not with all other sports, but like basketball, for example, is what I'm thinking of. I think it might be almost sometimes easier for people to go half speed because of the lack of contact in that kind of sport versus in football when it's such practice is such a strange, I think, medium for these guys sometimes trying to decide, you know, if you go half speed, you could almost get hurt. Someone can run you over or
Oh
someone,
yeah,
and then if you go full speed and someone else isn't going full speed, then you look like, what are you doing? So there's like
yeah,
it's like a fine line, and often players talk about that. I read a story. I forget. I think Deron Harmon, when he was in Detroit, I think this was him, but they were asking him about tanking, and he was like, "If I can't, we aren't good, but I can't. If I go out there and I don't go full speed, like I'm going to get hurt. Like it's
yep.
not like I can just go half speed. Yeah, so it's weird to practice.
That's a great point. And by the way, for anybody who thinks that the Ravens preseason win streak is not important, that might be the best evidence I can give you. Almost always, the team that's playing harder is less likely to get hurt, not more likely.
Mhm.
So go all out to win these preseason games. Play them like they really mean something. And I know it didn't work out for J.K. Dobbins, and that was a freakish non-contact injury. But for most of the other players out there, the Ravens have played great second half defensive football throughout these 6 years or so that this has been going on, and it's defensive depth which has led to a lot of this. And I think that playing hard is probably always a good thing to try and reduce those injuries. All right. Who else do we want to talk about? Broderick Washington blew up a run left by Hill. I thought he had a pretty good practice. Again, he's part of what was going on that defensive line against the offensive players.
Yeah, I feel like you could kind of name anyone on the from all three units today. They all looked great. Anything that they tried to get going, running wise, they got in the backfield and passes. So I think all those guys kind of can lump them in.
Now you've been there every day, but Arthur Mullen had a pass defense on a 10-yard cross for Dante Demas in this one. Had you noticed him make any other plays so far since he got here? And I know he wasn't here on the first day or maybe two of camp.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I actually mentioned him today in my notes for the first time. As to say, it was the first time he kind of stood out to me, and that I noted that deflection. He looked, comfortable today. First time in pads and getting to a new team. So today was the day he stood out for me too.
Yeah, and he could really end up being the Ravens slot corner. If it's such a they got four guys now, I guess, at that position who are going for it. I don't think we mentioned him earlier with Ardarius and Stevens and Pepe, but it's quite a competition. And bringing in Mollett late like this, I have to think there's a pretty good chance he's going to make the team. They probably like what he does on special teams, but uh, it's an unbelievable amount of mediocre cornerback talent this team has to sift through to find the right guys.
Yeah, for sure. There's no, like we were saying earlier, there's no like clear cut,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, clear cut person, and I think and I think like you said, guys are gonna make plays, and it's a lot about what we won't see, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That obviously some of what we will see, because at the end of the day, your play matters, but um, I think it's a culmination of things, and I think that's on a team with not a lot of position battles. That's one where you got to keep an eye on it.
Yep. Yeah, we'll see what happens at left guard too, but I would agree. One player who's been interesting to me in terms of his usage in camp, and I understand this started in OTAs, is Daryl Worley has been playing pretty much exclusively safety that I've seen. I'm sure with Geno Stone, if he misses a couple of days, it's probably not going to change. But Daryl Worley, to me, played some fairly good cornerback for the Ravens last year, particularly in the game against Cincinnati, and he would be a guy who could help them certainly at a spot where they need a lot of help at corner. What have you seen from him or since OTAs?
I think he's a guy that's well. You got to remember, I got here like a week ago, but
Okay, sorry about that.
no, you're good. You're good. I mean, he's so I haven't. I didn't see him at OTAs, but he's a guy. I think who's been around, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's been around. He's proven, and I think having Worley, whether he's safety or whether he's in, I think I think having a guy like that who can be interchangeable, who you could kind of say, you know what you're doing, and we'll put you in there. I think it's more of that kind of thing with him, of like, if we know we can lean on him if we need to. Maybe let's see what we have, and if not, we can go to this guy or you know, and someone who's proven it and proven it in in the city already. So I think I feel like I kind of just said nothing, but basically what I'm trying to say is that I think it's good to have a guy who's a veteran who's been around in that secondary, whether it's in that slot, nickel spot, or in the back half with the safeties.
Yeah, Anthony Levine, a not dissimilar player in terms of he ended up playing wherever the Ravens asked him, but he played some deep safety, really well known for being a top quality dime back in 2018 in particular. But he also played some slot corner. And he even played a few snaps of outside corner when the Ravens had really serious injury problems in a game. And I do feel like Worley could be that kind of guy. Probably in the slot is not his ideal position, but it wouldn't even shock me if he got dime snaps if the Ravens were short on defenders at some point during a game. And he certainly he's a big contributor on special teams. He'll be a guy who has a focus there. And last year, and I don't know if you've heard this since you got to town, they had like 18 transactions involving Daryl Worley, which is the most I've seen by far for any single player on any team. But he kept getting elevated from the practice squad, signed to the team, then cut, then re-signed to the practice squad, and then re-signed to the active roster, and then cut again, and then re-signed to the practice squad. It was just 18. You can look at it on his Wikipedia because there's just this long list of transactions for him. But anyway, they obviously, what that tells me is they obviously like him.
Right.
You don't even bother with a guy after that.
Exactly, that many.
All right, maybe we talk a little bit about the interviews, and I just want to hit on a point or two for each of these, and then we'll call it quits here.
Cool.
John Harbaugh, tell me one takeaway from you, and then I'll give you one takeaway of my own.
My one takeaway from Harbaugh today. You go first.
I'll go first. Okay, so here's what I thought. He described Patrick Queen as not getting distracted by the contract situation, and I'm paraphrasing it, as can happen. And to me, that was kind of a backhanded slap at J.K. Dobbins. And the situation is what it is. But the Ravens got about 6, 7, 8 guys right now who are in their 4th year. They probably all want to be extended. When we talk about Broderick Washington, we talk about Justin Madubuike. Those guys are out there playing their hearts out right now on the field. It shows every day. Patrick Queen, Geno Stone is a guy who probably would love to be extended at this point. And it obviously hasn't happened yet. And then you've got JK and he's not on the field and is obviously in some form of protest over the general treatment of running backs. He is probably correct in that if as a free agent, running back next year, he's not going to make a lot of money. But I thought it was interesting that Harbaugh would say this about this. It probably is the better move for Harbaugh just to say, Patrick Queen really looks like he's coming to his own. I see so much more from him. I see such a great future for him, rather than mention the contract at all. As soon as you mention the contract, sounds like you're talking about Dobbins.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't even think about that, but now that you said that, yeah, it is true. And he kind of said the other day, like, that's a JK question.
Yep.
When asked about his contract, so it's definitely, I mean, and for him, I wonder if he even thought about it, but it's also true where it's that kind of like unconscious, like it's on his mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for it not to be on your mind. So yeah, there's probably something there for sure. And I think my takeaway was I didn't use it in my story, so I don't have. But he used 2 words to describe the defense. Mm-hmm. Do you remember what there was a?
It was about communication. It was gregarious and obnoxious.
Gregarious and obnoxious. That's what stood out to me.
Yeah, that's good.
A funny way to describe your defense.
By the way, when Harbaugh says 2 words like that and he picks them out, that's when Harbaugh really means what he's saying. He called Chuck Clark something like, it was like brief, bold, and some other B word, where that alliteration didn't just come from nowhere. He really means it. And then a lot of other times when he just starts going into random coach speak, then he's full of crap.
Oh, yeah.
So he's not going to tell us about injuries. There's just nothing serious. There's another time today where he doesn't have any idea yet. He's just hoping.
Hoping, yeah.
All right, let's move on. Anthony Weaver, I am tremendously impressed by Anthony Weaver. Just in
Mhm.
general, I think he's clearly a head coaching candidate in the NFL. You just listen to the guy speak; he's very intelligent, and also he's a defensive line guy. So I love asking questions about the defensive line. Uh, Two things came up today that I asked him about, and one was about the possibility of Travis Jones playing with Michael Pierce in some 1-3 snaps, and he said I definitely wouldn't rule that out. And he said there's two ways we might want to do that. One is against a team that likes to run the ball, and number two is if we think their linemen are soft and we want to beat them up a little bit. I just love that answer.
No, for sure. And I think I like the way he talks about Travis. He seems really excited about,
Mm-hmm.
Travis and what he can become. And I don't know if you saw the practice on Saturday, where they were doing one-on-ones. I'm not sure if you saw, but man, I mean, he was kind of a monster in those one-on, and one-on-ones, without pads for sure. In general, you kind of take with a grain of salt, but it was just a sign of like his power.
Yeah.
He was just kind of bull rushing straight at people. So yeah, I took away the way he talked about Travis as like a sign of, this guy could be really good.
One of the things that was often cited as a shortcoming about his play at Connecticut was that his tape was not all that great. And if you look at him, but the fact of the matter was at Connecticut, he's double teamed all the time. I mean, just all the damn time in that lousy team. He's going to be the focal point of attention. As a nose tackle in the NFL, he's going to get double teamed a lot. Michael Pierce has had to kind of work through that and try and not give up space, try and continue to deny space, even though he's double teamed. The thing that could be the big changer for Travis Jones is exactly what you're talking about, is the one-on-one wins. How do you get him those? Move him over to 3-tech with Pierce at the 1, and you might get some really explosive early down pass rush looks that, Jones one-on-one guard is a complete mismatch against most of the guards in the NFL. But Jones, blocked by two guys it's a more difficult proposition for Jones. Anything else about Weaver before we move on?
That was what stood out to me with Weaver. Yeah.
All right, that's good. We'll move on. Patrick Queen. So he was the third of the podium, and Michael Pierce tried to sneak up and get to the podium first, but he's just a little too slow, and Patrick Queen got there.
Yeah. I thought Patrick Queen stood out to me before his even press conference, because he was hitting today. He seemed to be not pulling any punches in terms of once the pads got on, he seemed excited to go. I think his press conference overall, I took away from it, he sounds like someone, and I don't. It's not hyperbole, because I don't. A lot of players sound like this, but he just felt very motivated to me. Very. I have to prove something to I guess everyone, himself. Who he is and what he can do is kind of what it sounded like. And I think if I was a Ravens fan, I'd be encouraged the way he sounded, like the way he was speaking. I don't know if there's like a specific answer, but the way he was responding to every question was almost like he's been kind of chopping at the bit to get back on the field and to prove what he can do.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Chris. Absolutely spot on. The comment that I thought was interesting was he was asked about the contract situation. He said, "Well, everyone around me was pissed, but then I had to figure it out." And he mentioned talking with God and this sort of thing, and he had to learn how to do it. I thought there's a certain maturity that you see growing there, and we have not always seen that from Patrick Queen, to be honest. I mean, I've been a frequent critic of his. Frankly, didn't really like the draft pick originally because I thought it was a big gamble at a high valuation for inside linebackers. But he's a heck of a player now, and he's on the verge of making a lot of money for himself and his family. And hopefully, this is the year he goes out and really puts all the pieces together. And I would say, at least from what we can see of his state of mind from that 4 to 5 minutes he was in front of us, I'm encouraged.
Yes, for sure.
All right. Well, Michael Pierce, the last guy to the stand, and he finished asking about the speeding tickets on 83. And apparently they have 2 speeding cameras now on 83. And Maureen and I drive downtown to baseball games or to football games all the time, of course, and we know where the cameras are. and we know how to avoid them. And in fact, there's a little speed sign that tells you how fast you're going before each
Yes,
one.
yes, yes.
But
When he
apparently
said
that's his
when
own.
he said that, I was thinking about it driving home today because I sometimes my GPS will tell me, so I try to see that. But yeah, yeah, he had me thinking. I think what stood out um, for me with him today was I don't know. This is kind of just me thinking as a reporter, but like when he talked about him doing uh, alternative things now to get right, the hot yoga.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what stood out to me for sure. Like the stuff he's doing.
Yeah, it's great for a lot of reasons. First of all, he's tying it to his current thing, so he's does more stretching and more flexibility, and of course that sounds like it should reduce injuries, but so do a lot of other things. Like I'm eating right,
Exactly.
and I'm keeping my
Right.
weight in line, and he still looks big to me, but he's certainly not the kind of big he was when he showed up the last time he got thrown off the field by the Baltimore Ravens. Now I'm forgetting how long ago that was. It might have been 2018 or something at this point, or 2019.
Mhm.
But he didn't. He was sent away from the facility at that point when he showed up at about 370 pounds. Now, it looked like he had some other things to bring besides the hot yoga. He said he worked with Chuck Smith to improve his pass rush technique, something he really wanted to do. And then he also mentioned that Chuck Smith he'd already talked to Chuck Smith apparently about 5 years ago, and he was very honest about it. He said, "I didn't implement any of the advice he gave me."
Yeah, yeah, and he kind of talked to and then he kind of I always enjoy when guys are reflective in that
Mm-hmm.
way and kind of
Yeah.
like honest about who they are and how they've evolved. And I thought that was cool for him to say that and admit that,
Yeah.
and then also talk about how he's mentoring guys, and also talk about how maybe I'm not. He kind of highlighted like maybe I'm not trying to give the offensive line all of my, they're my teammates, but I'm not giving them my tips yet. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what he didn't say that verbatim, but he was saying like right now I'm trying to beat them, they're trying to stop me. So at the end of the camp, I'll give them tips. I appreciated that candor.
Yeah, he definitely talked about iron sharpening iron there himself with
Yeah.
Linderbaum and Sala in particular, and I do think that A gap is a major concern for the Ravens going into this season. Obviously,
Mhm.
having Ben Powers there provided a pass blocker who could cover a lot of what Linderbaum was struggling with as a rookie, and that now is going into a state of flux. Whoever they get to play left guard not going to be as good a pass blocker as Ben Powers was.
For sure.
So.
Yeah. And that'll be like we talked about position battles. We'll see how that one goes.
Mhm. All right, Chris, just an absolute pleasure having you on. I appreciate you taking as long as you did tonight to go through this. It's always nice to have somebody else to talk with it. Although these shows have been pretty long, even when I've just been doing them myself with the notes. But tell folks where they can talk with you online and find your work.
Oh yeah, I am on Twitter at KRISRHIM1, and on the Baltimore Banners website you can find my articles. I'll be covering the Ravens this season, and travels to the games, and so I have all the coverage you need on the site or on Twitter.
All right. Outstanding, Chris. Other folks out there, if you'd like to be on a film study short, there is still time. Hit me up. DMs on Twitter are always open. I'm always interested in talking about your idea for how the Baltimore Ravens can be better or are particularly good or whatever else you want to talk about with the Ravens, whatever your beef might be. But DM me on Twitter. I'll get right back to you and we'll decide if there's a show there. Chris, thanks again for joining me.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.